Good evening. This is Bob Tigenhoff. Just closed the door so we won't be interrupted. I'm the director of the Center for Active Lifestyle Medicine at the Irvine Medical Group of Irvine. We do a lot of integrative medicine type things, and for the last 5 years or so, I've been doing a lot of detoxification work with our patients. It has involved a lot of food-based things, as you might imagine, but also what we've discovered is over time, there are a lot of toxic exposures that we get through the environment, through the chemicals that we're exposed to, things like that. And those can be very, very disruptive to the whole detoxification effort. So we've developed a whole variety of different tools and techniques to use that help people avoid some of those toxic exposures. Over the course of this 12-part series that we're going to be doing, and starting tonight, we're going to be talking about a lot of these different exposures and how you can control, again, your exposures to these things and make yourself much healthier than you otherwise would be. Tonight, we're going to be talking about cleaning products and what you can do to avoid some of the more toxic exposures that come from those. Window cleaners, floor cleaners, tile cleaners, toilet bowl cleaners, things like that. We're also on Wednesday at 5 o'clock, we're going to be talking about dry cleaning. And if you've ever brought clothes home from the dry cleaner and hung them in the closet, you know the next morning that there are obviously a lot of very toxic chemicals that are used in the dry cleaning process. We're going to see what you can do about those. Then on Thursday, we're going to be talking more about personal care items, and personal care items are going to be cosmetics. They will be shampoos, hand lotions, body lotions, shaving cream, things like that. And again, we can get an awful lot of toxic exposures. Our skin, we recognize now, absorbs a lot of these things right through. And but there are a lot of amazing things that we can do in order to really protect ourselves. We will go ahead and get into that shortly. As I said, the series is 12 sessions long. We're going to give you a lot of tools that you can actively use in order to protect yourself and keep safe in what has essentially become a very unsafe world. Now, it's very legitimate to ask the question, why is this an unsafe world? Well, it seems that in the last 70 years, approximately since the end of World War II, we have gone a little bit crazy in terms of this explosion in chemistry. We are exposed today, it's been estimated at around 100,000 different chemicals that synthetic chemicals are now actively out and about in the world at large. We get exposed to these things. We did not evolve to deal with them very successfully, but fortunately our body recognizes most of them. That's why they are not incredibly toxic and poison to us on short notice, but they do have long-term health effects, and we want to avoid the impact of that as much as we possibly can. So again, we have about 100,000 chemicals that we're exposed to. Unfortunately, today, we don't have anybody that's out there protecting us from these things. We like to think that that's what the EPA does, right? That's what its name would imply, but that's not really its charter. It is not supposed to go out there and seek out dangerous chemicals and protect us from them. Unlike the drug pharmaceutical industry, which has the FDA that requires very rigorous testing and proof of safety before a drug is introduced to the public, and even though that may be a flawed process, at least there's a process going on. In fact, when it comes to industrial chemicals that are used in consumer products and things like that, there is no FDA type of function. So it is by law recognized that it's the chemical industry's responsibility to decide whether or not the chemical they're selling is safe or not. Now, if it's not safe, who knows? There is no human testing. There is very little testing that's done in mouse models, which is the typical sort of thing. There is no obligation to release the results of any of those tests. So we really don't know whether or not if they're meaningful. And of course, so far as the chemical industry is concerned, there is a huge difference biochemically between mice and humans. Therefore, even if you show unhealthy effects of a chemical in a mouse model, that doesn't necessarily prove anything so far as humans are concerned. Unfortunately, that creates a little bit of a gap, and the chemical industry has been able to slip through that gap and literally flood us with all these different chemicals that may or may not cause harm, great or small. We just don't know. The problem, of course, is that I'm not a chemist. I assume you're probably not a chemist either. So how do you protect yourself? You can look at the ingredient labels on a lot of these different products. And tonight we're going to be talking about cleaning products, but it applies really pretty much across the board. But how do you interpret these 40-letter long words? I have no idea what they mean. You probably don't either. But fortunately, there is an organization out there that was formed a number of years ago. They've been fairly active for a long period of time, and it's called the Environmental Working Group. They're made up primarily of chemists. They look at the data that is out there and exists, and they actually do a lot of ranking of products. And one of the resources that we're going to look at tonight is theirs. The website that they have is right here, www.ewg.org. It's probably the most important thing that you'll get from tonight's presentation. You want to keep it near and dear because it has a wealth of information on it. We're going to look at their recommendations and the database that they have and how you can use that to create a safer environment for yourself. Another alternative, the other alternative that you have to using what are potentially very toxic products in your house is to make some of these things yourself. And at the end of the presentation, I'll tell you how to email me if you'd like, and I'll send you a list of how to assemble all of these different do-it-yourself types of products. They are every bit as effective as the commercial products. They have they don't have any of the really toxic ingredients that turn cleaning products bright blue, bright yellow, bright green, all of these different things. They don't have the fragrances that actually end up being fairly toxic. So they are very safe to use, and cost-wise, they're very, very cheap. They're very inexpensive. And there's lots of good reason to use them. In fact, in my house, I have a couple of spray bottles. I have formulas written on the outside of them because the formula varies slightly. If you're cleaning tile, cleaning toilet bowls, cleaning sinks, kitchen counters, things like that, the formula changes. So I write it on the spray bottle, and when the spray bottle is empty, I just refill them from the relatively few raw ingredients, things like vinegar, distilled vinegar, basic soap, water, baking powder, or baking soda, things like that. And you just put these things together and you can use them pretty easily. If I want something that's a little bit more convenient, then I really want to go to commercial products, but I want to know which ones are acceptable, which ones are safe. So the Environmental Working Group has a database that they keep on their website. It's called Guide to Healthy Cleaning. When you go to that, it will rank. It has approximately 2,500 commercially available products on it. It ranks them all, assigns them a grade A to F. A, as you would assume, is the best. B is also acceptable. C is a little bit on the border. D's and F's you probably want to stay away from because there are real problems with those. Now the A, B, C, D, and F are assigned based on a couple of criteria. One is human toxicity. That's most of our major concern. Another one is environmental toxicity. That's also a major concern for many of us. And then thirdly, and this is an interesting one, is transparency of ingredients. The Environmental Working Group considers a lot of the toxic ingredients are buried in things like fragrances, natural flavorings, things like that. Not so much with cleaning products, obviously, that's more with food items. But there are a couple of words that are sort of code words in which you can hide a lot of stuff. Now, the other thing to recognize about this is that there is absolutely no law, federal or state, that mandates companies manufacturing cleaning products have to list the ingredients that are in them. That seems very odd. It seems almost impossible, but you'll find products out there that simply don't list their ingredients. Now, the other part of that is there's no law that says you have to list all of your ingredients. So if I have something very carcinogenic like benzene or formaldehyde in my product, I don't have to put that on the label. I can just decide, I forgot, and I left it off. Environmental Working Group, when they evaluate all of these chemicals, they also go to the Occupational Safety and Health Department, and they get the OSHA reports. And in the reports, what they often find is that workers have come down with conditions and illnesses related to chemicals that are in the products that are there on the OSHA reports, but they're not on the product labels. And so they take all of this into consideration, and that's how they rate their different products. Now, are we talking about a tempest in a teapot? Is this something that, oh my gosh, it really doesn't affect that many products, it's not a big deal? Well, in the database, the 2,500, 1 out of 7 products gets either an A or a B. The rest of them don't. So there's a lot of nasty stuff going on in all of these different chemicals. Approximately 3/4 of the products have chemicals in them that will exacerbate asthma symptoms. So respiratory problems are rampant throughout these cleaning products. We know that 1/4 of them have either ingredients or impurities that have been linked to cancer. So that may not be a really good idea. We might want to avoid those. Approximately 2/3 of all the products had problems with them that made them unacceptable by and large across the board. So there's a lot of things to avoid. Now, when I go into these different products, and I'll show you a couple of examples. One of them I just pulled off sort of randomly, an all-purpose cleaner, is Dr. Bronner's Pure Castile Soap, the lavender version. If you can see that. And if you'll notice up here, it gets an A. So the ingredients are pretty good. It gets a high mark for the ingredients. It also gets a high mark because they are very transparent. There are some companies, by the way, that are known for their transparency in this area. Seventh Generations happens to be one. Ecover happens to be another. There are several dozen. So while I'm singling those out, I don't want to imply at all that those are the only ones who do this and do a good job of it. Secondly, on the other hand, of course, there are a number of companies and products that are known throughout the industry to really do a very poor job of listing ingredients and of putting ingredients in that are safe to use. I took a look at another product in the same category, a commercial solution germicidal spray, which is never usually a good thing to hear about a product. We think it makes us safer, but typically the germicidals, the antimicrobials, are a really bad thing when it comes to ingredients like triclosan, which is used in a lot of personal care items. We know that it's no better than soap and water, yet it has a whole bunch of very negative potential effects. So this one gets an F, probably well-deserved. One of its ingredients scores a D, and that ingredient happens to be a sodium hypochlorite. And sodium hypochlorite has all kinds of issues in terms of environmental impacts. It's very toxic to aquatic life. It's an asthmogenic, so it'll tip you into an asthmatic attack if you happen to be oriented that way. So lots and lots of reasons to avoid these different toxic products. As I mentioned, I have a list that I pull from a lot of different resources. So the environmental group is one great resource for really rating products that are commercially available and you're going to run into. If convenience is a big factor for me, then I want to buy a commercial product, and it's the easiest thing for me to do, but I want to get the least toxic version of it that I possibly can. On the other hand, like I said, if I have the time and the inclination, then I may want to go the do-it-yourself route. And there again, I'm going to get a gallon of distilled white vinegar. I'm going to get baking soda. I'm going to get a couple of relatively small number of source materials, and then I'm just going to mix them up as I need them. And that's a very inexpensive way to do it. The effectiveness of the product is, generally speaking, on par with the commercial items, so I don't lose anything in terms of cleanliness or look when it comes to laundry detergents and things like that. If you want to get that list, you can just send me your email address and your name by making a submitting a question, and instead of a question, really, it'll be your name. If you can put in toxic cleaning products, then I'll know exactly what it is you're looking for, and I'll be happy to email that out to you. There are good cleaning solutions for, as I said in the beginning, for toilet bowl cleaners, for laundry detergent, for tile cleaners, for just all-purpose cleaning countertops and tabletops, things like that. Window cleaners, mirrors, those slightly different formulations, but just as effective. I use them here in the office. Everything that I do here in our office, I try to keep as safe for both our patients and for myself as I possibly can. And so we do that. And again, if you can just send that to me, I'll be happy to email all of that information out. I would like to thank you. I think we're sort of getting here towards the end of the presentation. I'd like to thank you for joining me and watching. Hopefully you've learned a couple of things. Like I said, ewg.org is a wealth of information. We're going to be going back to them in some of the other programs that we have coming up. We'll look at some of their other products. Some of them are phone app based. It's a great thing to do. A great way to check your products and get safer ones. And we'll be going over those in the weeks to come. Again, I thank you very much for tuning in, and I look forward to your joining me again when we talk about dry cleaning and how to protect yourself and your family from exposure to those types of chemicals on Wednesday night at 5 o'clock. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time.